Kingdom and Australia sent troops and planes back to Iraq. Russia, a key sponsor of Bashar al-Assad's tyrannical regime in Damascus, reignited Cold War tensions by formally annexing Crimea, which Russian Marines, politely masquerading as green men, had not so stealthily seized in the spring, sent submarines and long-range bombers to intimidate its neighbors in their own seas and airspace, and armed and sponsored Ukrainian rebels who shot down a Malaysian airliner with a huge loss of innocent life. Iran continued its push to become a nuclear threshold power, supported Assad in Syria, and yet became a de facto ally of the United States in Iraq as Tehran and Washington sought, each for different reasons, to bolster the Baghdad government. As this disastrous year closed, the fourth winter of war settled over Syria, and 9 million displaced Syrians languished in freezing mountain camps with little prospect of ever going home. Half of Syria's 23 million people depend entirely on humanitarian aid. More than 200,000 had died. Babies born in the camps that winter froze to death within days. Refugees and displaced persons reached historically unprecedented numbers, fueling a worldwide epidemic of suffering, people smuggling, and exploitation of asylum seekers. Across the increasingly imaginary Iraqi border, thousands had been displaced, decapitated, sold into sexual slavery, shot in the street, or crucified for minor infractions of Sharia law, as idiosyncratically interpreted by whatever local ISIS thug happened to make it his business. Panic pervaded Baghdad, and Erbil, capital of Iraqi Kurdistan, became a frontline city within sound and occasional reach of the guns. Islamist fighters from the Middle East, Europe, Australia, the Americas, and all parts of Asia and Africa poured into Syria and Iraq at a rate 12 times higher than at the height of the anti-American war in 2007, swelling ISIS to more than 30,000. For comparison, al-Qaeda, at its peak before 9/11, never had more than 25,000 full-time fighters. Thousands poured across Syria's frontier with Turkey, a NATO member that nonetheless tolerated relatively free movement to, or increasingly from, the conflict. ISIS provinces, or wilayat, appeared in Libya, Afghanistan, Pakistan, North Africa, the Caucasus, and Egypt, and extremists in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Nigeria swore allegiance to Baghdadi's caliphate. Attacks by ISIS-inspired terrorists hit Europe, America, Africa, Australia, and the Middle East. 13 years, thousands of lives, and billions of dollars after 9/11, any progress in the war on terrorism had seemingly been swept away in a matter of weeks. On 10 June 2014, ISIS seized Mosul, anchor of northern Iraq and home to more than 2 million. 12 days before the city's fall, President Obama had betrayed no inkling of impending collapse in a speech at the United States Military Academy at West Point, where he failed to mention ISIS at all, having earlier dismissed them as a JV or junior varsity team, wannabes lacking the capability of al-Qaeda, and spoke of what was once called the global war on terrorism as if it was winding down. "You are the first class to graduate since 9/11, the president said, who may not be sent into combat in Iraq or Afghanistan. When I first spoke at West Point in 2009, we still had more than 100,000 troops in Iraq. We were preparing to surge in Afghanistan. Our counterterrorism efforts were focused on al-Qaeda's core leadership. 4.5 years later, as you graduate, the landscape has changed. We have removed our troops from Iraq. We are winding down our war in Afghanistan. Al-Qaeda's leadership on the border region between Pakistan and Afghanistan has been decimated, and Osama bin Laden is no more. Today's principal threat no longer comes from a centralized al-Qaeda leadership. Instead, it comes from decentralized al-Qaeda affiliates and extremists, many with agendas focused in countries where they operate. And this lessens the possibility of large-scale 9/11-style attacks against the homeland." What happened? How could the president so misjudge the situation days before the Mosul debacle? How did we get here? Can we recover? And what does a coherent strategy look like now? Blood Year, which builds on, updates, and expands a shorter essay published in April 2015, is my attempt to answer those questions.